Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. At this time, of course, there are issues being raised as far as rumours, certainly at this time, as far as the caretaker setup is concerned, what is likely to be the makeup. Also, as far as the timely election debate for once again seems to have started, and whether there will be the issue of census itself, and there have been some reservations voiced as far as the time that it will take, and whether the census already conducted should be the census that is followed for this elections, whether there is time. All of that today on Perspective. We'll be talking about the surrounding rumours surrounding this important issue with regard to the next elections. There's also, of course, the issue of delimitation, the issue of there being the coalition overall being on one page as far as these key issues are concerned, empowering of perhaps the caretaker setup, which will come into play, whether perhaps amendments are in order, are these just rumours, or are this likely at all? All of this building up before certainly close to the caretaker setup now, certainly nearly a month to go. We'll be discussing all of this today. In addition to this, also the situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned, the ambassador's visit, as far as the terrorism that is flowing from across the border, and of course Pakistan's stance on that, and what can we expect in the next couple of weeks. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Aniq Zafar, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Muneeb Qadir, who is a political analyst and a legal expert. Thank you for joining us. And Iqbal Zafar Jhagra, who's a former Governor KPK, also from PML-N. Thank you for being with us. Aniq Sahab, like I said, it's not unusual to have this kind of rumor mill closer to the caretaker setup, closer to that time. But what do you feel as far as the census issue is concerned? It has cropped up now and again, not for the first time. How are you looking at things?
Well, as you are right, Mahrukh, that census issue crops up often. Before the election 2018 also, there was a census in 2017, and at that time it was decided that it will be approved provisionally, and the elections were held on the basis of that census. And the previous government, Mr. Khan's government, had allocated funds and mandated that during various inter-provincial coordination meetings that a new census will be held. By the way, I'll just like to explain here that there is no constitutional provision which says that it should be held every 10 years. That is not correct. It can be held anytime the CCI or other platforms decide.
But the last census
was 2017, right? So in now we are again faced with a census which had its share of controversies, but now we are moving towards Council of Common Interest meeting on July 25th. And one of the core main agenda for CCI is to approve this census. If the CCI approves this census, then it is notified. Once it is notified, then a constitutional provision kicks in which says that election should be held under the fresh census. But there are now other legal and constitutional issues.
But there's also
involved.
the issue of time, right?
Yeah, time, of course. But before that question is that if the census, the new census is notified, then how many seats can be allocated to different provinces? That will be the question. There is already a talk that 1 seat will increase in Karachi, and 7 seats will increase in Balochistan, and these seats are going to be taken away from Punjab, I think. So this is a problem in the sense that the Article 51 of the Constitution talks about the duration and composition of the National Assembly.
So let me come back to you on that. I mean, I want to talk about what this will mean for the next elections. But let me go to Muneeb Sahab. Muneeb Sahab, how integral do you see this issue to the issue of a free and fair election? Maybe about 2.5–3 months from now.
I think that it's only timely elections which can be regarded as free and fair, and so this disagreement or this, I think contention that the coalition parties are faced with, and a lot of, I think, speculation going on whether the elections will be held in time or not. I think all of it centered around the results of the digital census, which are yet to be, formally notified. So it's been reported that after the Election Commission of Pakistan will have like 3 to 4 months in which to come up with the latest delimitation. So that could perhaps further delay the election. And so, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding it, and elections being held in an uncertain environment definitely compromise the fairness of the election, whether they will be free and fair election or whether they won't be. And also there's the fact that
weren't these the same issues
yes,
that confronted we were confronted with during the last elections also?
I think this time it's a bit different because the last time the delimitation came well in time, right before the election. But this time around, there is a lot of contention as to whether the previous delimitation is going to be used, the previous consensus will be used, or the digital consensus which was published by the ECP last year in August. And if that is the case, then they will have to submit a report to the Council of Common Interests, and then the CCI will then have to forward the same to the Election Commission, and this whole process could take 4 months, and we are short on time because the Prime Minister has recently announced that they would be dissolving the assemblies possibly before the end of the National Assembly's term. And if that is the case, then there's a big question mark over whether elections could be held even within the 90-day time limit that the Constitution stipulates. So this air of uncertainty was missing in the last general election 2018.
Okay, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Aniq Sahab, the issue of there being a prolonged caretaker setup, that is also something that is being talked about. It's not unnatural. Again, whether how much credence we can give this at this time, we don't know, but it's certainly up in the air. Extending it, because certainly at this one way of looking at it is that the government at this time is feeling the pinch of taking decisions that will have its consequences in the elections. Yeah. Do you think a prolonged setup with things perhaps settling a bit economically would suit them?
Well, there are two ways of looking at it. Politically, the government, the major parties in the government cannot seem to be running away from the election, right? So they will have to come up with a narrative where even if the caretaker setup is extended in terms of its benefits, it may benefit them, that people start forgetting about their policies. Maybe the caretaker government takes even tougher decisions, and people say, oh, the previous guys were the better ones.
But the decisions in any case we have to take for the IMF.
Yeah, decisions will have to be taken. In fact, one of the concerns of the current political setup is that the caretaker setup which comes in must continue the momentum of economic reforms and tough decisions, because if you are going to be lazy about that, then again you will be reaching the situation which the government faced from April to 2022 onwards. So there can be pros and cons of such a decision. But the question is that who will have the power to extend that tenure of a caretaker government? The caretaker government does not have a specific tenure in the constitution. It is just that they are to be there till the next government takes over, the government after the election.
So it can be
so it will be a case. Again, we will be going to the Supreme Court. Again, we'll be going to the Supreme Court, and on the question of census, whether it will be the new census or the old census. On that also, I am looking at many petitions going to the Supreme Court, particularly from Balochistan and maybe MQM. They will be pushing for the new census. The PML-N maybe, or PPP also, they may want the elections to be held as much early as possible within the constitutional framework. 90 days is the maximum. If they dissolve by 8th or 9th, then they can hold elections somewhere 8th or 9th November.
So you're saying that it's going to, so if this goes, the issue goes to the Supreme Court. Let me go to Muneeb Sahib. He's also a legal expert. Muneeb Sahib, if the issue does go to Supreme Court, we're looking at the court deciding the issue with regard to, you know, whether the timeline of the elections has to be followed in its entirety or not. So, you know, like Aniq Sahib is saying, what kind of a scenario are you envisaging when, you know, like he's saying, Balochistan also, and perhaps, you know, there are other parties also who would be interested in going for delimitation?
The thing is, first of all, as far as delimitation is concerned, if there are any changes made to the number of seats in the National Assembly, of course, that would require 2/3 majority in the Assembly, and that is not going to happen after the resignation of PTI lawmakers anyway. But, you know, the Supreme Court dealing with matters pertaining to election, we saw something very similar to that. You know, this is very reminiscent of what just happened earlier this year with regards to the Punjab election controversy, and the date of 14th May was stipulated. But there was a huge, there was a division of opinion even amongst the top judiciary as to whether the judiciary can even intervene in such matters, or whether, you know, the date of election is best left with the Election Commission of Pakistan. So if that happens, that would be that would lead to extremely
conclusive judgment on that. Is that true? We still don't have a conclusive end to that issue, right?
Yeah, there is no end, and it could further delay elections. So, I mean, that would be the most undesirable way of going about things. Of course, I mean, there is no bar on having recourse to the Supreme Court, but we need to keep it in mind that that would only end up in delaying tactics and wouldn't lead us to where we want to get to. In fact, you know, interestingly, it's been reported, and it could be just rumor mills, that Mr. Ishaq Dar is being looked at as the caretaker prime minister, and amendments to Elections Act 2017 are being envisaged, which would give much more control to the caretaker government, which might in its turn be unprecedented, because we haven't seen caretaker governments being entrusted with, you know, coming up with economic policies and playing a much more active, robust role in politics. So.
Right, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Aniq Sahib, this is certainly, you know, like I said, these are certainly rumors at this time. We don't know if they're true or not. But the nature of our economic situation at this time is certainly not great, and there are issues with that, and perhaps putting things in order there will be the first priority of all stakeholders?
Again, this is a catch-22 situation, because all economy and politics are interlinked. If there is uncertainty, instability in the political arena, then the investment climate, the economic decision making cannot be stable, and you cannot give trust and confidence to the markets. If the markets do not trust their rulers, are not certain about the outcomes of certain political decisions, then the market is reluctant, and that is a very dangerous situation to be in. So whatever we do, whether we want to go for elections within the next 2.5 months, 3.5 months, or even if for argument's sake, which I would say that perhaps we should not be opting for that, even if we are talking about 4 months delay, even in that case, we should be very clear from the word go that what we are trying to do, so that we can tell the people, the markets, the international community that this is our plan. But as mentioned by Muneeb also, once the census is notified, I think it will kickstart many other issues.
Okay.
It will legal and constitutional issues, like Article 51, the table in the Article 51 which assigns seats to different provinces and Islamabad, will have to be changed. Okay. You cannot change it without a constitutional amendment. Okay. But even before that, then the question is, if in Punjab, for example, some districts, their population has shifted. Okay, for example, one district has 4 seats, but its population has now decreased. Another district has 7 seats, population has increased.
So you're saying it's a Pandora's box.
Delimitation even in that case will become necessary. Even if we are not going to reassign the seats for the provinces in the constitution within the provinces, the delimitation question is within the provinces. So within the provinces you will have to go for delimitation. That again is a lengthy process. There is a process of election commission's scheme, delimitation, then there are petitions to challenge that. So and last time I can tell you with certainty, last time these petitions were like in thousands objecting to
and what did the court say last time?
No, the court was not involved last time because provisional census was notified well in advance, and election commission had time to for delimitation and also under constitutional amendment number 25 we had reallocated seats to the provinces, we had taken away seats from FATA. And all that was done in constitutional amendment number 25.
Okay, let me go to Muneeb sir. Muneeb sir, that in a kind of environment where at this time certainly I don't want to say this, but the efficacy of the courts itself is an issue at this time. Of course, if we are looking and there being currently, of course, the issue of elections already being in court, and we've seen what's happened as far as that. It doesn't seem to be reaching a conclusion, and we're closer day by day to that time when we will invariably need a caretaker setup and all those things. So in that kind of a scenario, what do you expect from this kind of litigation that will ensue?
A deadlock. Constitutional deadlock and a deadlock amongst the judiciary, because that has happened several times already this year, and in any case, the constitution gives a very wide margin to the election commission itself to determine what conditions are conducive to free and fair election. And so it doesn't really it doesn't quite suit the Supreme Court to be directing the election commission as to how those free and fair elections are to be conducted, because it's the ECP which is implementing all the necessary work that needs to be done on the ground. So they are in the best position to determine and assess as to what is the most conducive environment to holding election. So nothing else than a judicial split. That is what we're going to see again. Certain judges are going to be disputing the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court itself in the matter. And again, there might be internal disagreements, and they would be deepened within the judiciary if the Chief Justice constitutes a bench unilaterally and then goes ahead and starts dealing with the matter. So, as I've also said in my previous response to you, it's going to lead to extremely undesirable outcomes. I mean, there is a lot of contention even amongst the ruling coalition parties as to which delimitation should be used, which consensus should be used. But going to the court, resorting to the courts for a resolution of these disputes, I don't think it's going to resolve. I think there would be further many legal complications that may arise out of a recourse to the judiciary.
We are, as far as the legality of this, of having, of course, Darsa being very much a part of PML-N, also at this time a minister of this government. Is there a legality? I mean, how do, for the caretaker setup, is there a certain, what does the law say on whoever can be chosen? There's no requirement, it depends on consensus. What is it, legally speaking?
It's mostly consensus based because in any case, if we were to look at the Elections Act itself, or the Constitution for that matter, the role of the caretaker government, so far as the law stands in its present form, is to ensure that there is a smooth transfer from the caretaker to the democratically elected government after elections have been conducted in accordance with the law of the land. But, again, there might be a little bit of a tug of war between the ruling coalition parties. They would want to have more influence in deciding who gets to serve in the caretaker government, and at the same time there are concerns that not. Yes.
But it can be anyone from any political party also. That's what I'm saying.
There is no, and
there's no bar.
just one last point, that the recent talk of Mr. Ishaq Dar being elected as the caretaker prime minister, of course it's a speculation. A lot of people are saying that that might be necessary to ensure that there is continuity as far as economic policies are concerned, because this is a particularly sensitive time for Pakistan in economic terms.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Iqbal Zafar Jhagra Sahab, who's with us now. Ji, Jhagra Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes.
Jhagra Sahab, there is a lot that is being said as far as the PML-N and the fact that, at this time, perhaps an extension as far as the caretaker setup is concerned to perhaps stabilize things. Certainly economically, your government, and we've seen the PDM generally, things seem to be going in the right direction with the IMF on board, with the 9th review, but it's certainly a lot needs to be done. How true are these? How accurate are these kind of speculations?
Well, these are not speculations. In fact, I would say that these are facts, and the caretaker government, Pakistan Muslim League Noon, has always ensured that whatever is in line with the constitution, law and constitution, it will abide by that, and it will never budge an inch from there. So we have always stood by the constitution, and we ensure that whoever wants the caretaker government, like you said, our main problem is economic problem of the Pakistan, and with our Mr. Dar sitting here, he is doing all efforts to bring things online and according to the constitution. And the main problem, of course, that Pakistan is facing today is the economic problem. Once we get over with this, I am sure that we will not have any problem in going ahead with the caretaker government. And after the caretaker government, the most important thing that you can foresee at this moment is free and fair elections. That is the only.
True then. So if you feel that economically it would perhaps be better for the country to have an extended caretaker setup, will that be the direction that you think that we'll be headed in, or do you think that the timeline has to be followed?
I think under the present circumstances, when we see that by the grace of God, now Prime Minister ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has been cleared of all charges that he was facing. So now there is no problem for him, and what he has always said is that I want free and fair elections, and I will ensure that whatever happens, I'll be here 1 month before the elections, and I will ensure that whatever elections are held, they are held free and fair. I will ensure on each and every polling station there will be my representative, and I will have them checked and ensure that free and fair elections are held, because that is the only way you can save this country from facing problems. Democratically.
Is it going to? Is it so? What about the issue of census? You think that the issue of census, the issue of delimitation, all of these are issues that are now raising their heads. Do you think it's just speculation? The last census will have to be followed because it's just plainly too late in the day?
Well, yes, of course. Now it has been decided that it will be on the last census, because at the moment it is not possible to go ahead with the new census. That is, if you go for that, then definitely the elections will have to be delayed. And we don't want any delay in the elections. What we want is free and fair election at the right time. Like if they are held in October, Nawaz will be definitely held in September.
Okay, fair enough. Jhagra Sahab, please stay with us. Aniq Sahab, you heard what Jhagra Sahab is saying. He's saying that it's just too late for there to be, decisions like this and to get into that. That doesn't preclude people from going to court, certainly.
That's what my point is. That's what my point is, that as I mentioned earlier, that the major coalition partners in the government are of the opinion that elections should be held within the constitutionally stipulated time frame. But as you rightly pointed out, and I have been alluding to, is that there are political parties. MKM has already raised the spectre that it wants the elections on the new census. And I'm pretty sure that all the parties from Balochistan will be raising this point, because the new census means 7 more seats going to Balochistan, and Balochistan as and political representatives from Balochistan will have a very legitimate claim that this is a province which has been ignored, which has and they may also be claiming that in the previous census there was undercounting of their population, etc. I have entirely another objection on this population-based NFC and all that, because now it is looking, we are looking at a situation where each province is trying to report more population because
they want NFC, more seats.
We want more seats and allocation in NFC, because
the money involved.
Money is also involved. So coming back to the point, so there will be people, interested parties, political parties from these provinces, which will be going to the court that once the new census results are there, why it is not being followed, because one clause of the constitution says that election should be held under the new census.
So then, of course, then let me go to Muneeb Sahib. The question is, it'll end up in court, and it'll be invariably up to their lordships and how they choose to deal with this. Muneeb, you agree?
What I think is that, like I said just previously, that the Constitution, particularly under Article 218, sub-Article 3, it gives a very wide discretion to the Election Commission to determine under what conditions the elections are to be held. So any litigation, I think, even if it is generated, is going to result in that kind of deadlock. Why? Because, very categorically, the Constitution talks about the Election Commission having the duty to, ensure that elections are conducted honestly and fairly and in accordance with law. And so the argument would go in such a direction that only the Election Commission of Pakistan is in the best position to determine the logistics of how to conduct the election. And Supreme Court of Pakistan, it's not its place to intervene it. What?
So you're saying that the Supreme Court will pass the buck to the Election Commission, and rightly so?
It will have to pass the buck to the Election Commission, because, there cannot be a conflict between the Supreme Court exercising jurisdiction on the one hand and the Election Commission then not being able to fulfill its constitutional duty of, conducting free and fair election. So then the balance will have to tilt in the Election Commission's favor, and the Supreme Court will have to, exercise restraint.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Jhagra sir. Jhagra sir, there is, certainly, I think this is a political question, that there is issues as far as we saw the increase that is now, of course, being made as to power tariffs that are being increased because of the Election Commission, because of the IMF and under the directions of the IMF. And so those tough decisions are at this time being made. But as far as your political capital is concerned, is the PML-N, going to an extended caretaker setup would perhaps, with the same economic policies, perhaps benefit the government at this time, to settle things a bit, perhaps overall in the country's favor? Would you agree?
Well, anything which is legitimate, Pakistan Muslim League Noon is always of the opinion, and anything which has a legitimacy, they will never come in front to stop it. They are going to go with the law and constitution of the country. This is something which has been over and again proved by Pakistan Muslim League Noon, that anything legitimate and in line with the law and constitution, they stand by it. And then particularly when the Election Commission comes into question, yes, they are supposed to decide when should the elections be held and what should be the schedule for the elections. So if that comes, then Mian Nawaz Sharif is one of those leaders who has always stood by the constitution and by the Election Commission schedule which has been given to them, he has always followed those rules and regulations. So there is no point in saying that we will have any problem in going ahead with that program. And particularly when the IMF, as you said, is concerned, we are of the opinion that without going in line with the IMF, we cannot proceed and run the country what it needs. We need finances, and finances at this moment are possible only from the IMF. So we have to consider that, and as I told you, me and Nawaz Sharif has always...
So an extended caretaker setup is not on the agenda?
It is not on the agenda at the moment. But I said, well, if there is any legitimate thing that comes into it, and it has to be...
if it is needed for the greater good of the country, then that is what will happen.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, this is what.
Right, fair enough. Let me come back to you. Aniq Sahib, you heard what Jhagra Sahib is saying. He's saying it will depend on the economic situation and whatever that entails. Of course, economic priorities remain paramount at this time, with the situation being what it is. As far as the overall situation between political parties is concerned, what kind of a government are you envisaging? Because there are a lot of political parties at play at this time. We've also had statements from the PML-N and the PPP that they do not support banning any party. So, political parties all over will be, it seems, a part of the political process. Whether any one individual qualified or disqualified remains, I mean, we don't know what will happen.
That's another issue for another day. But yes, political parties should be participating in the process. As for the caretaker setup is concerned, there has been some talk amongst the political parties that in the past we have appointed retired judges, retired bureaucrats, all these kinds of people who never had the experience of politics. So why not this time there should be a politician who should be appointed as the caretaker prime minister, because that is the function of politics. Governing the country is the function of politics. And as for the caretaker setup, I think you were talking to Muneeb also about it, that are there any restrictions on any politician becoming a caretaker prime minister? Absolutely, there are no such conditions.
So whatever is agreed upon?
Yes, whatever is agreed. Only condition is that there are people who are in the caretaker setup, they themselves and their immediate family cannot take part in the elections. That is the only condition. Otherwise, all other conditions which are to be met under Article 62, 63 obviously have to be met. Otherwise, there is no bar nor any politician becoming the
primarily it's about agreement between the leader of the opposition and
leader of the house.
Leader of the house.
Because this time leader of the house is to be has to consult number of parties. So there will be some discussion, there will be some wrangling, but I believe that 2 or 3 major coalition partners have already agreed upon some formula. And we will see it unfolding soon.
A formula that involves an extended...
no, not how the caretaker setup will be. I still believe that major coalition partners want the elections to be held by November anyhow.
But in any case, I mean, it seems to be, at this time, if you look at the kind of parties that we're looking at, there is another new party in KP also. There is a new party in Punjab also. So there seems to be an overall, like an amalgam of a lot of parties, and perhaps
that is a question which we will discuss in your programs when we reach near to the elections. That what impact these new parties have. Right now we are talking about the parties which have a stake in the system. One of the large parties is currently sitting outside the system on its own choice. That is entirely a different matter. But there are
their
parties.
Leader may be outside or not. The party itself will have their own.
Party will have to contest elections. You are not a political party if you are not contesting elections. Pakistan's political parties have learnt this lesson in the past. People's Party had boycotted in '85 and they regretted it. In 2008, some parties boycotted the elections and then regretted it. So boycotting an election is not an option. But yes, the particular party we are talking about, the particular leader we are talking about, because of that leader's politics, which is always for conflict and widening the cleavage between different stakeholders, he may suddenly decide that he doesn't want his party to contest elections or something, but I hope not.
But we've also seen sitting out is not always the best option for any political party in the past. Jhagra Sahab, your political capital at this time, do you think that people at, of course you have said categorically that Mia Saab will return, Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif Saab will return a month prior to the elections?
I am sure about that.
And overall, as far as the situation at this time is concerned, with the hard decisions taken, do you think that the voters understand that these are, the baggage of the last government? Or do you think that there's going to be some, political capital lost because of the way, and I think that the Prime Minister has also said this on numerous occasions, that they, the PML-N manned up and took the reins at a time when they knew that it would necessitate, and I think Maryam Nawaz also has said, necessarily for the country, it would mean losing perhaps a little bit political capital.
Yes, there's no doubt. As I told you, our Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif is of the opinion that even if we have to lose on our party side for the sake of the nation that is Pakistan, he is prepared to go to any extent for the sake of the nation that is Pakistan. But as you said, under the circumstances, Election Commission has a very important role. And anything that comes from the Election Commission, we have always stood by it, particularly when...
your vote bank. My question is it going to affect your vote bank? Is it going to affect your, performance in the elections at all? Do you think that it will affect it? Because we saw a power tariff increase yesterday only.
Yes, let it be, but it will, I am, inshallah, of the opinion and quite sure that it will not affect our vote bank. At the moment, people feel that to save the country, the solution is bringing back Nawaz Sharif to the country and PML-N back into the government. That is the only way. Even those who matter, they also have come to the opinion that yes, this is how it is. Although many parties, as you said, in KPK now the PTI parliamentary party has come. Look at the name now. Oh, this is going to create confusion for them, for their voters. There will be PTI and there will be PTI parliamentarian. How can the ordinary voter differentiate between this? So these things which are taking place on the other side, we never agree with this sort of situation to come up and we play according to what the other people are saying. We want everything to be clear to the voters that what we are doing is purely in the interest of the nation Pakistan. We want a strong Pakistan, and Pakistan, by the grace of God, even the superpowers admit that it has a strategic position and it cannot be do away.
On that note, we'll be taking a short break, after which we'll be right back. Welcome back. Aniq Sahab, like we were saying, it seems like, things as far as Jhagra Sahab is saying, he's saying things will be on time and whatever happens will happen in the best interest of the country. What do you expect? What is your feeling? You think it's going to be on time?
Well, my pray and my wish is that we hold elections in time, and I am not at all in favor of extending caretaker time setup because, as I said, that the country needs major reforms, and any government that has to undertake those reforms must have genuine electoral legitimacy. If the caretaker government does not carry that kind of legitimacy, so the
unless
political
you
parties,
empower it.
Empowerment is something else, but legitimacy is that they should have the backing of the people also. So the political parties which are responsible for running this country, they come into power with the backing of a large number of votes. All major parties score something like more than 10 million or 15 million or 16 million votes. So they drive their legitimacy from that. I would not like the caretaker government to take major decisions. They just need to keep the ship stable and hand it over to the elected government.
Let me go to Jhagra Sahab. Jhagra Sahab, I know that you are very much PML-N, but you're also a seasoned politician. What is your overall feeling? I mean, whichever government comes in, of course, Aniq Sahab is also saying that we do need reforms and we also need continuity. But the kind of scenario that it seems at this time, of course, it's too early to tell, that a government which is an amalgam of a lot of parties, do you think it will have that necessary backbone to then have those kind of reforms that are needed, judicial, economic, you may name it, we need to go there and we need to go in that direction very fast.
Well, the first thing that I have also mentioned, I started with it, and that was legitimacy. Anything that is legitimate, we are going to stand by it. I have told you, we are of the opinion that elections must be held on time, that is September, October 2023. That is the best solution to save this nation from any problems that that can be seen very clearly. But as I said, that when it comes to the Supreme Court and the Election Commission and things, then at that moment, as I said, Mia Nawaz Sharif is of the opinion that he has to be in line with what the law and the constitution of the country says. So if it is necessary for that,
there are questions that there were, your party, some members of your party themselves have said that, perhaps Mia Saab's return is dependent upon a change in the Supreme Court. Is that true?
No, not at all. Not at all. There is no such question. Even as I said, by the time the elections are held, whether there is a change or not, the change is very much evident. It has to come. The time is going to bring a change. But even if it doesn't, Mia Nawaz Sharif is of the opinion, whoever is the Supreme Court Chief Justice, he stands by the Supreme Court. It may be somebody who is not in line with his program, but he respects any decision that comes from the Supreme Court, whether it is from justice.
Right. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Aniq Zafar Saab, thank you for your time. Iqbal Zafar Jhagra Saab, thank you for joining us. Muneeb Qadir Saab, thank you for taking out the time. Overall, of course, we will know closer to the election what the scenario is. But at this time, the stated position remains that things will be on time, elections will be on time. It doesn't look like an extended caretaker setup, but whatever is in the best interest of Pakistan will happen. Let's hope that we have a legitimate government after the elections also, and that there will be perhaps that step and foray into the kind of reforms which the last government promised but never happened. And perhaps we will see judicial reform, perhaps we will see economic reform, which are the order of the day. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.